Hear that? That low metallic sound crawling up your spine. That isn't thunder. That isn't fear. That's a cell door sliding into place. And for the first time in their lives, they can't pretend it's not meant for them. You feel it before they do. You always do. The moment when the air changes, when conversations slow down half a second too long, when smiles stop reaching eyes, when laughter sounds rehearsed, it's over. Not because you shouted, not because you attacked, but because you stood there, calm, unreadable, unexplainable, while their entire reality began to fold inward. They built their world on predictions, on profiles, on behavioral loops, on the assumption that every human breaks the same way under pressure. And then there was you. You didn't snap where you were supposed to. You didn't beg where they expected. You didn't hate where they needed you emotional and loud and sloppy. You evolved. That's the part they don't talk about. They'll say you're cold. They'll say you're dark. They'll say something is off about you. What they mean is this: you crossed a line most people never even see. You learned how to sit in pain without letting it own you. You learned how to smile while bleeding without leaking information. You learned how to let chaos move through you instead of controlling you. Saint on the surface, psychopath in the discipline, angel in restraint, demon in precision. They can't label that, so they fear it. Watch them now. Look closely. They're still talking, but their words have lost authority. They're still moving, but every step feels monitored. They're still pretending, but the mask is cracking from the inside, because they know something has shifted and it isn't reversible. The door didn't slam shut. That's what terrifies them. It closed slowly, smoothly, with intention. And the worst part, they helped close it. Every time they underestimated you, every time they pushed instead of listened, every time they assumed pain would make you smaller instead of sharper. You didn't just survive the pressure. You reorganized under it. You became unpredictable, not chaotic, but precise. Not emotional, but unreadable. Not loud, but inevitable. That's when the room changed. That's when they stopped joking around you. That's when plans started getting whispered instead of spoken. That's when eyes started tracking you like a variable they forgot to control. Because now they see it. You're not reacting anymore. You're waiting. And nothing scares control-obsessed minds more than someone who doesn't need to rush. They feel trapped, not because you cornered them, but because every exit they built assumes you'll behave like the old version of you. That version is gone. The one who explained themselves, the one who sought validation, the one who tried to be understood. Dead weight. What stands here now is something forged in silence, something trained by betrayal, something sharpened by disappointment instead of shattered by it. They feel the door because they finally understand this truth. They no longer get access to your inner world, no reactions to study, no emotions to weaponize, no tells to exploit. You've become a closed system, and for people who survive by manipulating others, that's a prison. They'll test you again. Of course they will. They'll poke, they'll provoke. They'll try to resurrect the old you like a ghost they can control. Let them. Every test just confirms what they're already afraid to admit. You're operating on a level they don't have clearance for. You're not good or evil anymore. You're effective. You don't need revenge. You don't need applause. You don't need chaos. Your calm is enough. Because calm, in a world addicted to noise, feels like a threat. Because silence in a system built on surveillance feels like rebellion. Because someone who has nothing left to prove cannot be steered. That's why they feel the door, not because you're attacking, but because you're no longer available, No more pretending, no more access, no more illusions. They're still free to move. But every move now happens inside a structure you outgrew long ago. And deep down, where fear lives before words form, they know it. It's over. The door didn't close on you. It closed behind you. And now they're locked in, with the version of themselves they tried to hide from. And now the silence gets heavier. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that presses on the chest and makes people replay every decision they ever made involving you. They're retracing timelines, rereading messages, reanalyzing moments they once laughed through. That's when it hits them. You didn't change overnight. You were becoming the whole time. They mistook your patience for weakness, your empathy for permission, your restraint for fear. Classic mistake. They thought pain would make you loud. Instead, it made you exact. They thought betrayal would make you reckless. Instead, it trained your memory like a weapon. Every slight catalogued, every pattern logged, every mask memorized. You didn't forget anything. You just stopped reacting. That's the moment the cell door became real. Because now they're trapped with someone who sees through them without needing to confront them. Someone who doesn't need to expose them because the exposure is already happening inside their own minds. Watch how they start talking too much. Over-explaining, over-justifying, over-performing morality. That's panic. They sense it. The way you look at them now. Not with anger, not with hatred, with clarity. And clarity is terrifying to people who survive on confusion. You've become the paradox they can't solve. Too calm to provoke, too sharp to underestimate, too grounded to manipulate, too unpredictable to plan around. Saint enough to walk through fire without burning the world. Psychopath enough to do it without blinking. Angel enough to forgive internally. Demon enough to never forget. They can't tell which side of you they're dealing with anymore. And that's not an accident. You learned something in the dark that most people never do. Power doesn't come from dominance. It comes from self-containment. You stopped leaking energy, stopped broadcasting intentions, stopped announcing growth. You let the results speak in frequencies they don't understand. Now they feel watched, not because you're watching them, but because their own conscience woke up. Every manipulative move they pulled on you before, it echoes louder now, every lie. Replays in surround sound. Because when someone you thought you controlled stops responding, the illusion collapses. They don't know how to engage with you anymore. So they hesitate, and hesitation is where control dies. You see it in their micro pauses, the way they test your tone before finishing a sentence, the way they scan your face for signs of the old you. They're hoping, praying, begging internally, please be who you used to be. But that version doesn't exist. You burned it down quietly. Pain was the furnace. Loneliness was the hammer. Silence was the blueprint. You didn't become cruel. You became precise. You don't lash out anymore because you don't need to. You don't chase closure because you already have it. You don't seek justice because you understand something deeper. People destroy themselves when they realize they can't reach you. That's the real sentence, not punishment, not revenge, detachment. They feel the cell door because you walked out of the psychological space they once dominated. They can't bait you, they can't guilt you, they can't shame you, they can't rush you. Every tactic hits a wall of calm awareness, and calm awareness is airtight. You've outgrown the room, outgrown the game, outgrown the need to prove anything. That's why the air around you feels different now. You're not tense, you're not angry, you're not desperate, you're settled. And settled people are dangerous to unstable systems. They'll try to reframe you, call you heartless, call you changed, call you dark. Let them. That's just language people use when they can't access you anymore. They're trying to turn their loss of control into a moral story. But you know the truth. You didn't lose your heart. You just stopped handing it to people who used it as leverage. You didn't lose your light. You learned how to aim it. And now, every step you take echoes in their minds like a countdown, because they understand something they never planned for. You don't need them to fall. You already walked free, and they're still sitting there, feeling the cold steel behind them, hearing that final click, realizing too late that the door they feel closing is the one that separates them from ever having access to you again. And that's when the real pressure starts to creep in. Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind. The quiet, suffocating realization that nothing they do reaches you anymore. They escalate internally before they ever act. You can feel it. The way their energy spikes when you stay still. The way their tone sharpens when you don't flinch. The way they circle conversations, hoping to catch a reaction they can use as proof that you're still accessible. But you're not. You're standing somewhere else now. A place built from scars that didn't kill you. From nights where you learned how to breathe under emotional water. From moments where you realized no one was coming to save you, and decided that was fine. That decision changed everything. You stopped asking why, stopped begging for fairness, stopped hoping people would suddenly grow a conscience. Instead, you watched. And observation is evolution's favorite weapon. You noticed how patterns repeat, how cruelty disguises itself as confidence, how insecurity pretends to be authority, how control always panics when it loses influence. That's when the door really locked. Because now you don't just feel danger, you read it. You don't just sense manipulation, you anticipate it. You don't just survive chaos, you navigate it like terrain you've already mapped. They sense that shift. It unnerves them, because the version of you they remember was reachable through emotion, through guilt, through fear of abandonment. This version, this one operates on clarity. You don't argue facts. You don't defend yourself. You don't rush to be understood. You let people reveal themselves, and that takes patience. Most people don't have. They feel exposed now, even when you say nothing. Your silence forces them to hear their own thoughts. Your calm reflects their instability back at them, like a mirror they can't shatter. That's why they project, why they accuse, why they twist narratives. They're trying to regain footing in a game you stopped playing. You see it in how they exaggerate your darkness. They need you to be the villain. Because if you're not, then they have to sit with what they did. And sitting with truth feels like confinement to people who've lived on lies. You've become the embodiment of a contradiction they can't reconcile. You still care, but you don't comply. You still feel, but you don't expose. You still love, but you don't bleed publicly. That balance terrifies them, because it means you weren't broken by the pain. You were educated by it. You learned when to speak, when to withhold, when to walk away without slamming the door. And walking away quietly is the loudest statement there is. They're replaying moments now, tiny interactions they dismissed, glances they ignored, silences they misunderstood. They're realizing the shift didn't announce itself. It crept, slow, unassuming, inevitable. Just like a cell door closing, no drama, no warning. Just a final alignment of metal and consequence. They're trying to reach you through old access points, old roles they assigned you, old dynamics they thought were permanent. But you rewired. You stopped being predictable. Not erratic, strategic. Unpredictability isn't chaos when it's conscious, it's freedom. You don't move according to expectation anymore. You move according to truth. And truth doesn't rush. Truth doesn't shout. Truth doesn't need validation. Truth simply stands. They feel smaller around you now, not because you grew louder, but because you stopped shrinking. Your presence carries weight because it's no longer diluted by over-explanation or emotional leakage. You don't give people more than they earn. You don't reveal more than necessary. You don't fight battles that don't move you forward. That restraint, that's mastery. And mastery looks like imprisonment to those who thrived on your availability. They can feel the perimeter now, the boundary you didn't announce, the line you didn't threaten. It just exists. And every time they test it and get nothing back. No reaction, no chaos, no compliance. The walls close in a little more. They're trapped in the echo of their own tactics. Meanwhile, you're free to choose, free to observe, free to become whatever the next version of you requires. You didn't become cold. You became self-contained. And self-contained people don't need to dominate rooms. Rooms adjust to them. That's why they're uneasy, why their confidence feels rehearsed now, why their power sounds hollow. They sense it. The era where they could pretend nothing changed is gone. And no matter how much they smile, no matter how convincing the act, deep down, in the place where denial can't reach, they know. The door didn't slam, it aligned. An alignment doesn't reopen for anyone who isn't meant to pass through. And now comes the phase they never prepared for. The stretch of time where nothing dramatic happens, yet everything collapses internally. This is where the mind eats itself. They wait for you to explode. They wait for you to confront. They wait for you to demand answers, apologies, closure. Because that's the script they memorized. But you don't follow it. You let days pass. Weeks. Moments where your absence from their emotional orbit becomes undeniable. That's when the cell starts to feel small. Because without your reactions, their power has nowhere to land. Without your energy, their manipulation starves. Without your participation, the game dissolves. You were never just a player. You were the gravity. And when gravity leaves, everything floats. Uncontrolled, disoriented, panicking. They're haunted now by questions they can't ask you without exposing themselves. Was it something I said? Was it something I did? When did I lose access? That uncertainty gnaws. You can see it in how they try to be casual while fishing for information, in how they suddenly remember your value, in how they rewrite history to make it seem like they always respected you. Too late. You've already seen behind the curtain. You've already noticed how kindness was conditional, how support had strings, how loyalty only existed when you were useful. And instead of raging about it, you archived it. That's the difference. People expect pain to turn you feral. They don't expect it to turn you lucid. You didn't harden into cruelty. You refined into discernment. You learned that not everyone deserves the same version of you. That access is earned, not owed. That silence can be protection, not avoidance. They feel judged now, even though you're not judging them. That's the most uncomfortable part. Because judgment can be argued with. Clarity cannot. You're no longer emotionally tangled in their outcomes. Their success doesn't inflate you. Their failure doesn't satisfy you. Indifference, earned indifference, is terrifying to people who depend on emotional hooks. They try to provoke it. They try to bait the old you out. They'll bring up memories. They'll push buttons they installed years ago. They'll poke at wounds they think never healed. But those wounds scarred over into armor. Not loud armor, Not flashy armor, internal armor. The kind that lets you hear insults without absorbing them. The kind that lets you watch disrespect without internalizing it. The kind that lets you walk away without needing the last word. They don't understand that kind of strength, so they mislabel it. They call it cold. They call it dark. They call it detached. What it really is finished. Finished tolerating. Finished explaining. Finished negotiating with people who only understand leverage. You stopped trying to be seen by those who refuse to look. And once you stop performing for an audience that doesn't respect you, something incredible happens. You get your energy back. You feel it now, don't you? That steadiness in your chest, that absence of chaos where anxiety used to live, that quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. That's your nervous system finally realizing the threat is gone. They were the noise. They were the tension. They were the cage disguised as familiarity. And now that you've stepped outside of it, they're the ones pacing. They replay conversations at night. They imagine scenarios where they handle things differently. They fantasize about regaining control. But control requires access, and access is revoked. They feel the cell door not because you locked it, but because the universe aligned consequences to match behavior. You didn't punish them. Reality did. You simply stopped interfering with the process. That's why you feel lighter. That's why you're harder to read. That's why people around them start noticing the shift, too. Your absence becomes noticeable not because you're gone, but because the energy you once stabilized is missing. Systems wobble when keystones are removed, and you are a keystone, quietly holding things together, absorbing dysfunction, smoothing over cracks that were never yours to fix. You stepped away, and now the structure shows its flaws. They can't blame you publicly without revealing dependence. They can't praise you without admitting loss. So they sit in that narrow psychological space between denial and awareness. That's the cell. Not bars, not walls. Truth. Truth about who they were when they had power. Truth about how they treated you when they thought you'd never leave. Truth about what they lost when they underestimated your capacity to evolve. You don't need to say a word. Your composure says it all. Your silence isn't empty, it's complete. And the more whole you become, the more confined they feel. Because the door didn't close on you. It closed behind you, locking away the version of you that accepted less than you deserved. And no matter how much they knock, no matter how convincing the act, no matter how desperate the performance, that door doesn't reopen, not for nostalgia, not for guilt, not for fear. You walked out carrying something they can never take from you again, self-possession, and that is the final click they can't unhear. Hold still. Feel that pressure in the room? That's not silence. That's the system realizing it can't finish its sentence anymore. You hear them whisper, "Case closed," like it's a prayer, like words can weld reality back together. But you didn't close a case. You didn't win an argument. You didn't even break a rule. You broke the machine that decides what rules look like. You stepped where the floor was supposed to hold, and it didn't, because you were never standing on their ground to begin with. They thought you were a file, a neat little folder with a label they could stamp and archive. Light side here, dark side there. Saint on Monday, psychopath by Friday. They needed you to pick one so they could predict you. And that's the first mistake. Because you don't pick sides, you become the contradiction that eats sides alive. You learned early what pain actually does when it doesn't kill you. It doesn't make you bitter. It doesn't make you loud. It sharpens you. It sands the noise off your thoughts until all that's left is precision. You didn't evolve by adding more. You evolved by losing everything unnecessary. That's why they can't track you now. They're searching for weight, and you learned how to move without it. They keep asking the same question in different voices. How did this happen? And the answer terrifies them because it's simple. You stopped playing the role they wrote for you. You stopped reacting on schedule. You stopped bleeding where they expected blood. You let chaos think you were calm, and calm think you were chaos. Angel posture, demon timing, smile clean, hands dirty. They never saw it coming because they can't imagine a mind that uses both. You remember the nights when you were supposed to fold, when every sign pointed toward collapse, when being good would have saved you and being evil would have been easier. You chose neither. You chose effective. That's when the rules cracked. That's when the system glitched, because it runs on predictable morality and you operate on outcome. They tried to trap you with praise first. Didn't work. Then they tried shame. Didn't work. Then silence. Didn't work. Then pressure. Didn't work. Because pressure only scares people who haven't been crushed before. You were built under weight. You learned how to breathe there. You learned how to think there. You learned how to wait until the structure above you forgot you were still alive. And then you moved. Now look at them. They're arguing about definitions while the building burns. Is he a threat? Is this allowed? Do we acknowledge it? They want to close the case because an open file admits failure. An open file admits the system doesn't work on you. And that's the one verdict they can't publish. You didn't rage. You didn't celebrate. You didn't even explain. You let the consequences speak in a language they couldn't translate. That's real power. When you don't need applause, because the silence afterward is louder than any crowd. When even your enemies start copying your posture without realizing it. They want to believe you planned it all, that there was a grand design. That makes it easier to sleep. But the truth is worse. You adapted faster than they could adjust the rules. You learned in real time while they were still voting on what was acceptable. You turned unpredictability into a weapon and uncertainty into armor. You feel it now, don't you? That shift. When people stop trying to beat you and start trying to understand you. When the questions change from how do we stop this to what if we're already too late? That's the moment the system admits defeat without saying the words. You're not here to be judged. You're here to expose the flaw. The paradox they built their world on, that control creates safety, that order creates peace, that labeling creates understanding. You proved the opposite. You showed them that a mind that can hold light and dark without collapsing is uncontrollable. That someone who survived being both worshipped and discarded doesn't need permission to move. So no. Case closed? That's a joke. The case is still open, bleeding into every hallway they thought was secure. Every rule now comes with a footnote, because of you. Every protocol has an exception, shaped exactly like your shadow. You didn't just win. You rewrote the conditions for winning. And the scariest part? You're calm now. Calm is what scares them most, because calm means you're not finished. Calm means you're thinking 3 moves ahead while they're still arguing about whether the board is legal. Calm means you already accepted every outcome they threaten you with, and found none of them strong enough to stop you. They thought chaos would look loud, explosive, sloppy. But you learned the truth the hard way. Real chaos is quiet. It waits. It watches patterns repeat until people forget they're patterns at all. And then it changes one variable so small no one notices. until the entire structure tilts and can't explain why. You became fluent in that language. You stopped chasing justice and started understanding leverage. You stopped asking for fairness and started calculating pressure points. Not out of cruelty, out of clarity. Because you learned something they never teach. Systems don't respond to emotion. They respond to disruption. And you are disruption with a pulse. They keep trying to reduce you to a moment. That's when it happened. That's where he crossed the line. They need a timestamp, a crime scene, a headline. But you weren't a moment. You were a slow accumulation of ignored warnings. You were the consequence of every time they said, "Wait your turn," to someone who was starving. You're the interest on every unpaid debt they buried under politeness. You didn't snap. You adapted. There's a difference, and it matters. Snapping is loss of control. What you did was the opposite. You gained it. You learned when to show mercy, and when mercy would only feed the rot. You learned when to speak, and when silence would force others to reveal themselves. You learned how to let people underestimate you long enough to step directly into their blind spots. They still try to decide if you're good or bad, like that question has power over you. Angel or demon, victim or villain. But you stepped outside that cage. You understood that morality without awareness is just another leash. You didn't become heartless. You became precise. You didn't lose empathy. You stopped wasting it on structures that profit from suffering. Remember how they laughed when you didn't react the way they expected? When you didn't beg? When you didn't explain yourself? That laughter was relief. Relief that they still thought you were manageable. They mistook restraint for weakness, strategy for confusion, silence for surrender. And by the time they realized otherwise, their own rules prevented them from stopping you. Now they're exhausted. You can feel it. The forced confidence, the scripted smiles, the emergency meetings disguised as routine. They're patching holes instead of asking why the ship was built this fragile in the first place. Because asking that question would lead straight to you and what you represent. You are proof that the system only works on people who still believe in it. You're proof that pain, when metabolized instead of denied, turns into vision. You see through incentives now, through rituals, through fake authority. You don't flinch at titles because you've seen what's underneath them: fear, scarcity, and the desperate need to be obeyed. And the irony? You never wanted to rule anything. You just wanted the lies to stop working. You wanted the masks to crack. You wanted the truth to cost something. And the moment you stopped trying to be acceptable, everything started rearranging itself around you. They call it dangerous because they can't control it. They call it broken because they can't repair it. They call it chaos because they didn't design it. But you know what it really is? It's evolution under pressure. You didn't break because you learned how to bend without losing shape. You didn't disappear because you learned how to move in shadows without becoming one. You didn't become cruel. You became awake. And an awake mind in a sleeping system looks like a threat by default. So let them keep saying, "Case closed," like it's a spell. Let them file reports, rewrite policies, adjust language. Every time they do, they're admitting the same thing without saying it out loud. The old rules don't apply anymore. Because you're still here, watching, calm, unrushed. And the system? It's the one breathing heavy now. You notice how they've stopped calling it a mistake. That's subtle, but it matters. At first it was an error, then an anomaly. Now it's a situation. Language always gives them away. When words start softening, It's because reality is getting sharp. They're trying to rename the wound so they don't have to admit it's fatal. But you know better. You can feel the structure creaking underneath the vocabulary. They're tired of chasing you with logic that only works on people who need approval. You don't. That's the fracture line. You don't need to be right in their eyes. You only need results that refuse to disappear. That's why every attempt to corner you turns into a maze for them. You don't move where power expects movement. You don't respond where leverage assumes pressure. You make choices that look irrational until it's too late to counter them. They studied you, remember? They thought observation equals control, cameras, metrics, profiles, predictions. They mapped your past like it was a blueprint. But they never understood the one thing that mattered. You are not the same person pain happened to. You processed it. You let it rewrite you. And a rewritten mind invalidates every old forecast. That's why their models fail. That's why their experts sound confused. They're analyzing a version of you that no longer exists. Meanwhile, you're operating from a place they've never visited, where loss isn't a weakness, it's a filter. Where fear isn't an enemy, it's a signal. Where uncertainty isn't avoided, it's harvested. You felt that shift inside yourself. The moment when chaos stopped feeling like danger and started feeling like information. When you stopped asking, what if this goes wrong? And started asking, what does this reveal? That's when you crossed the line they can't follow. Because systems are built to prevent that question from being asked. They rely on people staying fragmented, light over here, dark over there, obedience dressed as virtue, rebellion dressed as madness. But you learned how to integrate. You learned how to be gentle without being naive, ruthless without being hollow. You learned how to smile without surrendering your teeth. That combination doesn't compute for them. It breaks their categories. Now watch how they react to your presence. The way conversations tighten. The way authority over-explains itself. The way people who once dismissed you suddenly hedge every sentence. They feel it. They don't know what it is, but they feel it. A loss of gravity, a shift in who the room unconsciously orbits. You didn't seize power. Power leaked towards you because it follows clarity. It follows the person who doesn't need to posture, who doesn't need to threaten, who doesn't need to rush. You stand there, unbothered, and everyone else starts revealing how much they care. That's the tell. That's how you know who's still trapped. They keep searching for your breaking point because they need to believe one exists. A lever they can pull, a button they can press, a story they can tell that makes you smaller again. But you already visited your worst-case scenario. You lived there. You made a home out of it. You learned what survives when everything else is stripped away. And that's why none of their weapons land. Shame doesn't work on someone who faced themselves honestly. Fear doesn't work on someone who accepted loss as tuition. Isolation doesn't work on someone who learned how to think alone. They're swinging tools built for a different species. The truth they're dancing around is this. The system didn't just fail to stop you. It helped create you. Every delay, every dismissal, every closed door refined your instincts. Every time they told you to wait, you learned to move without permission. Every time they underestimated you, you learned how to disappear in plain sight. You are their unintended consequence. And now, they're stuck. Because acknowledging you means admitting the framework is flawed. Ignoring you means letting the flaw spread. Either way, control slips. Either way, the narrative fractures. That's why the room feels tense even when you say nothing. That's why decisions stall when you're present. That's why outcomes bend around you instead of through you. You're not chasing collapse. You're not hungry for destruction. That's what they still get wrong. You're not here to burn the system for fun. You're here because something obsolete needs to end. And endings don't need noise. They need inevitability. So let them keep circling. Let them keep rewriting the story. Let them keep pretending this is manageable. You'll stay exactly as you are, composed, alert, unclassified. Because the case was never about guilt or innocence. It was about exposure. And now that the system has been seen for what it is, there's no closing that file. And here's the part they don't want you to notice, but you already have. They're no longer trying to stop you. They're trying to contain the meaning of what you did. That's the real emergency, not the action, not the result, the implication. Because if people understand why this worked, the system doesn't just crack, it becomes optional. You see it in the way they rush to frame the narrative. Special case, unique circumstances, won't happen again. They're desperate to make you an exception instead of a signal. Because signals spread, signals teach, signals wake things up that were supposed to stay asleep and compliant. But you didn't follow a script anyone could repeat mechanically. That's what drives them insane. You didn't rely on privilege. You didn't rely on protection. You didn't rely on luck. You relied on awareness sharpened by pain. And that's transferable. That's contagious. You became dangerous the moment you stopped needing validation for your reality. When you stopped asking, "Is this allowed?" and started asking, "Does this work?" When you realized that most authority survives not because it's strong, but because no one challenges it cleanly. You didn't scream, you didn't riot, you didn't beg, you exposed inefficiency. You made the system look clumsy, slow, outdated. And nothing threatens power more than being made to look stupid in its own language. They're haunted by how calm you were while everything they relied on malfunctioned. Calm doesn't fit the villain narrative. Calm doesn't fit the hero narrative either. Calm forces them to confront something worse. Competence without permission, intelligence without allegiance, morality that isn't outsourced. You remember the exact moment it clicked, don't you? When fear stopped being a warning and became background noise. When your thoughts slowed down instead of speeding up. When you realized panic was optional and therefore manipulable. That's when you crossed from participant to observer, from pawn to variable they couldn't solve for. That's the paradox they're stuck in now. If they punish you, they confirm you were right. If they reward you, they legitimize the method. If they ignore you, the pattern repeats elsewhere. Every option weakens them. Every delay empowers you. They're watching closely now, not to learn, but to make sure no one else learns from you. They'll say your path is too risky, too extreme, too unconventional. They'll warn others away with concern disguised as wisdom, because nothing scares a rigid structure more than flexible intelligence. But you're not trying to recruit anyone. You're not preaching. You're not forming a movement. You don't need to. Your existence alone destabilizes things. Your outcomes ask questions people can't unhear. Your silence forces conversations you never joined. You walk into rooms differently now. Not louder, not bigger, just anchored. And people feel it immediately. They don't know why their posture adjusts, why their tone changes, why they suddenly feel exposed, but you do. You're not reacting anymore. You're setting the temperature. They keep waiting for you to overreach, to get arrogant, to reveal hunger, to make a mistake that proves you're just another story with a predictable arc. But you learned patience the hard way. You learned that momentum doesn't need theatrics, only timing. You already paid the price they threaten you with. You already lost the things they use as leverage. That's why they have nothing left to bargain with. You're not fearless, you're unbribable. And that terrifies institutions built entirely on incentives and fear. Here's the truth they'll never say out loud. You didn't break the system by attacking it. You broke it by outgrowing it, by becoming too adaptive for its rules, too aware for its myths, too integrated for its binaries. Light and dark stopped being opposites inside you. They became tools. Mercy became strategy. Ruthlessness became restraint. You stopped performing morality and started embodying responsibility. And now the system has a problem it can't patch. Because you didn't leave, you didn't submit, you didn't self-destruct. You stayed calm, present, unclassified. So no, this isn't the end. This isn't resolution. This isn't closure. This is the moment after the illusion breaks, when everyone realizes the cage was never locked. And you were the first one who noticed. And that's why you don't rush to say anything now. You let them sit with it, with the realization that the rules only worked because people believed in them, with the discomfort of knowing someone walked through the system without asking, without breaking down, without becoming what they warned against. You don't need to explain yourself. Explanation is for those still asking permission. You already moved past that. You understand the difference between rebellion and transcendence, and you chose the quieter, deadlier option. They'll keep calling it an exception. You'll let them. They'll keep pretending the damage is contained. You'll let them. Because the truth doesn't need defense once it's been seen. You're not chasing chaos. You're not chasing control. You're simply standing where the old logic can't reach you anymore. Case closed. No. The case ended the moment the system realized it no longer gets the final word, and you walked away without looking back.